I am the Philosophical Bachelor, and today I want to talk about how nothingness matters. Ideally, we should first understand the nature of reality to then know what we should do. For instance, if we truly believe that Santa Claus knows if we have been bad or good and gives accordingly, then we will act accordingly, depending on whether we want to get a nice present or a lump of coal. Hence, the nature of reality influences how we should lead our lives. This is the path of inquiry taken by many philosophers such as Benedictus de Spinoza, Plato, Aristotle, Henri Bergson, and also by Keiji Nishitani in his magnum opus, Religion and Nothingness, published in 1961. Besides the utility that knowledge brings, there is also the sheer pleasure of knowing the true nature of things, which is why Socrates, through Plato, talks about the bliss of ascending to the realm of forms, to be in touch with the true reality. How can we then know the nature of reality? Humanity has been struggling with this fundamental question since the beginning, and it is a major field in philosophy called metaphysics, and more specifically within metaphysics, ontology. Prior to the early days of philosophical thought, myths abound where we tell ourselves fantastical stories because of our deep-seated need to know. In a major advance, the pre-Socratics systematically used their reasoning capabilities to give us philosophy, such as Parmenides, who proposed that all of reality is a monolithic, unmoving unity, while Heraclitus countered that the fundamental unit of existence is change. Plato tells us about a realm of forms where the perfect versions of things instantiated in the sensible world reside. Aristotle talks about hylomorphism, where a substrate known as prime matter, when form is added to it, becomes a being. He also talks about a divine first cause, the unmoved mover, the first cause which set the ball rolling in the determined universe, where all events then unfolded mechanically. Many religions have something similar, of a creatio ex nihilo, a creation out of nothing, varying on the theme of whether all is determined and hence life is fatalistic, or that at least some creatures have libertarian free will. The price of choice in the latter is a judgment after death based on the religion's various criteria, where some will go to heaven and the rest to hell. Eastern religions like Buddhism and Hinduism talk about karma, an ineluctable law of cause and effect, which will result in continuous rebirth to higher or lower forms of existence depending on one's accumulated karma balance. Both tell us about a way to get off this endless cycle of death and rebirth by breaking through the cycle into a true realization about reality called nirvana. Other religions and schools of thought are pantheistic, such as the Neoplatonic oneness and Spinoza's Deus Siva Natura. In his book, Nishitani deals with all of these systems, but as a Zen Buddhist, he argues that realizing how things are in fact nothing will then guide us on how to live accordingly. Broadly, some key approaches to metaphysics are mechanical materialism, which is also considered the scientific worldview, teleological, such as God-given purpose, progressive, such as human self-reliance, essential substance, such as Plato's and Aristotle's ideas, and spiritual, such as theories concerning consciousness, mind, or soul. Immanuel Kant dealt all these speculative metaphysics a decisive blow with his transcendental critical philosophy. All that we know and can know are mediated through the machinery of our sense faculties and cognitive apparatus. The raw data received through our senses are never directly experienced. For us to make sense of them, they have to be processed through our cognitive apparatus through a priori categories of the understanding, after which we use our reason to judge them. We are never able to bypass this intermediary of our sense and cognitive apparatus to get at the things in themselves, what he terms as noumena. All that we can experience are the appearance of things, which he terms phenomena. We only experience their representations and never the things as they truly are. We only experience phenomena and never noumena. In addition, we only possess our point of view of a subject viewing the object, and never the point of view of the object. Nishitani asks, what is the basis or foundation of our knowledge? When we gain knowledge through sense experience, say the pain from a bee sting, we are operating on the ground or field of sensation. When we use our reason to figure out something, say the sum of two numbers, the basis or ground is reason, the field of reason. An empiricist will claim that all we can know are what knowledge we can gain using these two grounds of sensation and reason. You may recognize such knowledge to be scientific knowledge. Yet the knowledge we can gain through these are limited, and as Kant has explained, we can never in fact ever know the things in themselves. Further, as Friedrich Nietzsche had lamented, God is dead and we have killed him. Nietzsche is not saying that there is no God. He is, however, pointing out that through our shift away from faith towards reason, such as during the Age of Enlightenment and the advent of the modern scientific and scientistic worldview, we have lost our belief in God, and with it a basis for values. Yet we have not found something else that can replace it. We may have deep insights into, say, the atom, or developed advanced technologies such as computers or even artificial intelligence. But so what? What does it all mean? Mechanical materialism has advanced, accompanying a faith not in God, but in progress through human effort. The previous sources of meaning found in religious beliefs, which were foundations for people's lives, have thus been eroded. But what we have now, knowledge through science, or even profound philosophical insight, is unable to replace it. We are left with nihilism, where everything seems meaningless. We live and we die, and all our acts and efforts, no matter how great or how terrible, die with us, making them all seem futile. We are suspended over an abyss of meaninglessness, where if we try to find meaning in our lives, we will realize that there is none, leading us to the despair of nihilism. The strategy of the existentialists such as Jean Paul Sartre is to accept, if not embrace, the nihility. According to them, there is no meaning to life except what meaning we give it. Albert Camus recognizes the world and hence the conditions of life to be absurd, but tells us that that is alright, since we can still live in an absurd world. We can make our own values. In fact, we have to, since as Sartre observed, we are condemned to be free. Nishitani does not accept that this is the end of the story, where we have been unmoored from any foundation that can provide meaning, and hence have to invent, somewhat arbitrarily, our values. He thinks the teachings of religion can still guide us, though he does not intend his book to be doctrinal, although it certainly is a work on the philosophy of religion. Indeed, I find that regardless of whatever religious persuasion you may adhere to, including not having any, his metaphysics remains instructional. Going further, even if one does not believe in any religion or even in God, there is still valuable knowledge and wisdom that can be gained from these traditions. The baby should not be thrown out with the bathwater. To Nishitani, being unmoored and left on the field of nihilism is what will make us strive to find another field, another foundation on which we can ground reality. Driven by a search for meaning, one source some people turn to is religion, though what Nishitani is teaching is not a blind commitment. Instead, he considers some concepts from religious teachings that can help us find the way, primarily from Zen Buddhism, but also from other religions. The field that Nishitani proposes is the field of sunyata. Sunyata being the Buddhist Sanskrit term meaning absolute emptiness or nothingness. This emptiness or nothingness is different from the meaninglessness of nihilism, which he considers as a relative nothingness he terms the great negation. Nihilism is a relative nothingness because it does not deny that things exist. However, the fleeting nature of life renders all things meaningless. He also talks about the great doubt, where we doubt the veracity of existence, our own and the existence of other things. The breakthrough or conversion Nishitani thinks we have to make, driven by the desire to overcome the great negation and the great doubt, is to realize that the basis of everything is in fact nothingness. At bottom, there is nothing. The basis of our true nature and the true nature of everything is absolute nothingness. This nothingness, sunyata, is the key novel idea that Nishitani and the Kyoto School of philosophy to which he belongs brings to metaphysics. His idea in one sentence is, a thing is what it is only when it is not that thing, when it is grounded on what it is not, or nothingness. It depends on this nothingness, this what it is not, to be what it is. He gives an example of fire. The essence of fire to us is that it burns. But this burning is only from our point of view. From the point of view of the fire, its essence is not burning since it does not burn itself. Fire does not burn itself since if it does, then there is no more fire. Hence the true being of fire is, contrary to how we usually understand fire, grounded on the nothingness that is the non-burning of fire. The true essence of fire, what Nishitani calls virtus, is not only the burning that fire does for us, but perhaps more essentially, fire's own activity for itself, which is a non-burning. Another example he gives is of the eye. The eye, to us, is what sees, but the eye can see only because it cannot see itself. If the eye can see itself, then it is seeing itself, like the positive feedback loop we get when we place two mirrors parallel with each other. The reflection of one mirror's reflection is then reflected and then reflected again ad infinitum, such that the mirrors cease to be able to reflect anything else. Likewise, the eye, if it sees itself seeing itself, will be then unable to see anything else. For the eye to be able to see other things, it has to not be able to see itself. In other words, for the eye to be able to see, it has to not be able to see. What gives the eye the virtus, the ability to see, is the nothingness that is non-seeing. Likewise, the self of a person is only truly itself when it is not itself. We encounter the world through our senses, through our cognitive faculties, but we are not merely the sum of our senses and our cognitive faculties. We understand the world and its contents through our subjectivity, treating those things as objects, but we are not merely the subject, and the thing being considered by us is not merely the object of our consideration. Contrary to George Berkeley's idealist assertion of esse es percipi, to be is to be perceived, the thing remains its own self, whether or not there is some consciousness to perceive it. In short, there is nothing grounding our subjectivity and the objectivity of things. The nothingness that Nishitani refers to is not the reification of nothingness, such that nothingness in itself is actually a thing. Nothing is simply nothing. If we are only going to understand a thing as how we as subject perceive it as object, then we indeed can never get to the thing in itself, as Kant has explained. The way to get to the reality of things, according to Nishitani, is for us to lose ourself, and in that way gain our true self. By losing ourselves, he means setting aside our ego, our self-centeredness, to become no thing, to become a non-ego, so as to get to our true self and be able to encounter the true nature of things. Not through sensation, not through reason, and not through negation, but through nothingness will we be able to encounter true reality. But even here, I speak of a we encountering something, still mired in the subject-object paradigm. More accurately, I should say, on the field of nothingness are all things existing in their true natures. To know this true nature, we have to disavow our subjective point of view on it, to disavow our usual means of knowing through sensation and reason. In effect, to know, we have to not know, what Nishitani terms the knowing of non-knowing. In that way, we move from the great negation and the great doubt to the great affirmation of all existence. We need to lose our sense of self in order to get to the true self, because we are not merely our ego, not merely the subject that is master over all objects. We are instead both master and servant of all things. On the field of sunyata, things appear just as they are in themselves, in their elemental nature, not as an object mediated through our subjectivity or Kantian transcendental apperception. They are not objects for us, but simply things in themselves. Not an object separated from the subject perceiving it, but simply as it is, in harmony with all other things. Neither master nor servant, but in that way, both master and servant. We can see how this can be so if we move away from judging things as they are for us, for instance in terms of their usefulness to us, and instead try to see things as they simply are, as they are for themselves. For instance, when we are in our subjective mode, we may define a chair in terms of its function for us, as something for us to sit on. But if we can imagine the chair's point of view, it simply is what it is, whether or not anyone sat on it. Perhaps it will be easier to understand this when we consider living things. A cow exists not merely to serve as food for us. It has its own existence, regardless of whether human beings exist or not. Its existence does not revolve around us. It has its own life, its own pleasure to seek, its own desire, its own suffering unrelated to our existence. Nothingness grounds all of existence, and in that way connects all things. This absolute nothingness we share with all things is in fact closer to our true selves than the selves we are used to, wrapped up in our ego and subjectivity. In Buddhism, this interconnectedness of all things through being grounded in absolute nothingness is known as the principle of dependent origination, or in Nishitani's parlance, circumincession. We are not isolated subjects dealing with isolated objects, not masters dealing with servants. We are instead equals that are interconnected profoundly on the ground of sunyata, both masters and servants at once. Each and everything reflects every other thing in it, like living mirrors of the universe, as in Indra's web or Gottfried Leibniz's monads. Samsara is characterized by a self-understanding that is self-centered, full of attachment and clinging, and hence unable to penetrate through to true reality, trapped by karma on an endless cycle of death and rebirth. But nirvana is not some kind of Abrahamic heaven reserved for the afterlife either. Instead, nirvana is the realization of the interconnectedness and ground of nothingness within this life in this material realm in which we live. It is where we can recognize the true reality of things in themselves, not objects merely for us in our subjectivity, not a master-slave relation, but where each thing serves every other thing and is also master of every other thing. In other words, a relationship of care and concern, of love. Nishitani calls this samsara sive nirvana, nirvana sive samsara, or samsara as nirvana and nirvana as samsara. Nirvana, like samsara, is in the here and now. Similarly, there is no need to fear death, since death is simply a part of life. Nishitani terms this death sive life, life sive death. How can we achieve this relaxed outlook, this non-attachment? How can we achieve the state of sunyata? Buddhism teaches that meditation is the key, ultimately to reach a state of intense concentration known as samadhi, to really grasp the realization of the interconnectedness and the nothingness grounding all things, and hence grasp the true reality of everything. Nishitani believes that zazen is the way, where zazen is simply just sitting in meditation. That is all. To get to samadhi, to nirvana, there is nowhere to go and nothing to do. When we truly make the realization of sunyata, we can then accept the condition of the world as it is. But it is not a passive acceptance, not a quietism. Instead, the actions we take in living our lives will then be driven by a desire to serve, motivated by love, and not by fear and insecurity, which lead to clinging and attachment. In recognizing reality, we recognize also what we need to do, making them acts of joy, resembling play, and not laborious work. Lest we mistake play as foolishness or a waste of time, Nishitani reminds us that the child is never more earnest than when engaged in mindless play. Play for Nishitani is not the divertissement, the distraction or diversion away from our daily grind, but the standpoint that views Homo ludens as the highest mode of human being. Homo ludens being the man who plays. Play is when one takes up one's activity in true earnestness, out of love, making it a very serious affair. Thank you for listening to the Philosophical Bachelor.